This is my personal report and own story. In 1985, the company I was working with assigned me with my wife and 2 children to a depressing little town. I felt really frustrated because the destination was not the desired one. At that time, I wasn't a good Christian. I lived as I pleased and stuffed myself with occult books of all sorts. In my library, I had books on spiritism, magic and divination. I also enjoyed the reading of books on witchcraft by the North American anthropologist Carlos Castaneda. In that boring village, lost in the mountains, a middle-aged British man named Ted appeared, married to a local woman. A neighbor, my landlord, told me about this man who had an amazing ability to predict the future. This woke up my curiosity because I was desperate to leave that town and see what the future could have in store for me. One day, my landlord introduced this man, looking in his 60s, slim, white hair, and with a charming smile. He was a very friendly person, always giving sweets and treats to the children. My first meeting with him surprised me because he directly told me that he was asking for help, and he was there to help me. He used to carry a deck of tarot cards designed by Frida Harris, partner of Aleister Crowley, a well-known satanist. I didn't know at the time. And many afternoons with Ted, we spent time with his predictions and comments on spirit matters. In these card readings, he summoned deceased spirits who brought touching messages and warnings about our lives. He even described their looking and family private details that were impossible for him to know. One day, a neighbor recently arrived from another faraway town who worked in the bank. Ted left him in shock when he, in the reading, told him that his son was standing at his side. A son who had died in a traffic crash several years back. With this supernatural knowledge, I saw Ted as a true spiritual master that God had put in my life. At that time, I knew little of the Bible and was unaware that consultation with fortune tellers and with the dead is an abomination to God. In those years, I did meditation, and he told me that he was real close to achieving a goal in my practices. This dispelled my initial doubts, and I accepted his presence in my life as a master to help me in my personal fulfillment. He became a close friend of mine, and while away in London, he used to send me spiritual lessons in long letters. He carried also on his chest a big silver cross, but he insisted that it wasn't the cross of Calvary, but the cross of the 4 elements. Later on, I started to see him in my dreams. One night, early in the morning, I felt a strong pressure on my stomach, and with a certain degree of terror, I noticed that someone or something was pulling me out of my physical body. This pressure forced me to an astral projection, and to my utter surprise, Ted was standing at my right. I greeted him both floating in the air, and then the experience turned into a lucid dream. On another occasion, to dispel doubts that it wasn't just a dream, one afternoon at tea time, before I could tell him, he told me the precise details of my dream. All this led me to the conviction that he was in full control of astral travels, and he could go wherever he wanted. Weeks later, in one particular dream, I was with Ted in an office dim illuminated, and he showed me a book, insisting that he had to sign and put my name. I felt uneasy, and something told me to refuse this strange invitation. Tarot readings as entertainment were almost daily. He would read the cards to friends and neighbors, and for me they were of great interest, because through this activity we receive information and news from the past relatives and friends. At that time, I was unaware of the warnings of the Bible on the subject of divination and consulting the dead, which was actually necromancy. Later, I also understood that the presumed deceased relatives who attended these tarot meetings were simply demons disguised as relatives. Time passed, and to our group of friends came a young woman from the area who was engaged to a businessman. And in the end, we found out Ted was having a sexual affair with her. But the thing didn't stop there, because he also tried to seduce my wife and encourage her to leave home, leaving me alone with the 2 children. That evil plan opened my eyes, and now I remember the warnings of the gospel, because the devil, the father of lies, came to steal, kill, and destroy. When I became aware of these actions that only showed that he was a true wolf in sheep's clothing, I broke off all contact with him. At that time, I had a serious ailment, and on his last visit, he showed his true face. Saying goodbye, he celebrated that he was very sick, and then the attacks began. My wife was away from home for a few days visiting her parents. Then, when night came, in my bedroom I felt a gloomy, lurking presence. The tension was increasing in the room. I perceived the threat of several entities. When I lay down and tried to sleep, I could almost tangibly perceive those dark shapes that loomed over my body, trying to tear me apart and kill me with fear. For moments, I thought of running out of the house and staying in a hotel. The pressure was more and more intense. I felt the icy touch of these creepy creatures commanded by Ted. The terror was growing. I felt the footsteps surrounding the bed. I felt the creaking of the furniture, the scratches on the wall. My heart was racing in total panic. I also felt as they penetrated into my brain, like putting needles through my ears. I couldn't do anything. I was totally defenseless in the hands of those entities, and they couldn't turn to anyone. I was alone in front of a group of demons. I couldn't ask the neighbors for help. They would think I was crazy. Now I understood Paul's verses that a real fight is not against flesh or blood, but against spiritual host of wickedness, demons and human agents working for the devil. Time was passing slowly. I was terrified, and I couldn't get asleep. In the room was like a mist of cold, and something heavy was over my body. I was trembling, praying, and pleading, wishing the sunrise before these entities would finish with my life. I realized that books like Dracula from Bram Stoker is much more than science fiction or a tale. Demons are real, and they feed on humans' blood and fear. But people are unaware, and they don't understand that outside God's divine cover, we are all in real danger, with no protection. Therefore, it's important to stay away from sin and take shelter under the wings of the Almighty. If you are in the world ignoring these facts, sooner or later, you will fall in the hands of Satan, no matter how good person you think you are. By God's grace, I was able to survive that night. Feeling very weak, I began to beg God intensely to get me out of that horrible trial, because my life was at stake. I clearly knew that without His help, I wouldn't have survived one more night. I promised that I would get rid of the tarot cards and all the occult books that littered my library. In the following nights, the attack decreased in intensity. God had heard my prayers. And a short time later, the company offered me a post in a different town, and the attack disappeared. I learned the lesson in my own flesh. I got into the land of the evil one with all his temptations. I inflating my ego with psychic powers, looking for supernatural abilities contrary to the main purpose given to a Christian, the salvation of his soul and of the people around. With good intentions, I thought I was helping people exploring an uncertain future, giving them encouragement. But the road to hell is paved sometimes with apparent good intentions. In reality, with our tarot readings, we were drifting people away, distracting them from what is really important, that is God in our lives. And that the presence of the Holy Spirit is more than enough to do away with all the lies of Satan and his agents, who only seek the doom and destructions of the human race.